to essentially zero them out, getting to net zero emissions. So lots of work to be done. So we're still kind of filing in, but before we get started, I thought we would do a little show of hands. Who here took the commuter rail to get here today? Okay. How many of you then, when you got to Boston, you took the T? Yeah, all right. How many of you drove? And no shame in this game, but of those who drove, how many were in an EV? Okay, so we see some hands, but not a whole lot of hands, which is to say, there's a lot of work to be done. So now I'm going to welcome our panelists up to the stage. Joining me today, we have Abdella Chajai, CEO of Keolis Commuter Services. Come on up. We have Will Grayland, CEO of Indigo Technologies. Oh, thank you. Brian Koop, Executive VP of BXP, formerly known as Boston Properties. And Adam Urban, CTO of SparkCharge. All right. Thanks so much for being here today, all of you. This is so great to have you all here. So, as the title of this event suggests, we're talking about collaborative pathways. You know, so much of the work that's happening requires partnerships. And I want to start us off by talking about that. Abdallah, I'd love to start with you because Keolis might not be a name that everyone immediately recognizes, but the MBTA certainly is, which is what you're here to talk about today. So talk about the work that you're doing here in Massachusetts and beyond, and also what that partnership looks like.
Keolis Commuter Services is operating the commuter rail for the MBTA, and we have been doing that for 11 years now. And on the partnership, I think we have a contract to operate and maintain, but I think in this context, I would like to talk about one specific partnership we have, which is on the battery train, the BMU trains on the Fairmont line. So maybe you want me to develop a little bit on that?
Sure, tell us a bit.
So a year and a half ago, we proposed to the T an idea of an innovation proposal to basically try to accelerate the electrification of the commuter rail. And we know there are some challenges, some constraints, and they have accepted, and we are working together to implement battery trains on the Fairmont line. Fairmont line may not mean something for everybody, but Fairmont line is going through the Justice Corridor, Environmental Justice Corridor. It's between South Station and Redville, and it's important for us because that's the passengers we want to support in that CO2 emission reduction. That program, that project, has been endorsed, and it would not have been possible that to happen without the Healy-Driscoll administration, because they had that vision and that willingness to decarbonize the commuter rail and the transit side. So with their support, we have been able to start to work on this project. Basically, and I would just say this project is, you know that maybe you don't know, but all the locomotives we have are diesels, and I think here it's to accelerate with a specific different partnership. So we have a different specific contract that we, Keolis, are in charge of bringing all the experts, all the industry together, from the rolling stock manufacturer, the financier, the infrastructure, the constructor, every one of them together to accelerate this project and to make it happen. So the idea here is to have battery trains running in 2028, which usually normal time takes years more, twice as much time to happen, because electrification is a very complex topic. So you need to put wires, you need to run trains, and then you have to buy trains. Here with batteries, we can utilize the existing infrastructure we have. We have wires at the station, for example, and then the train run under those wires, recharge the battery, and then when it doesn't have wires, like run on batteries. That's the idea there. And I think what is different in that partnership, it's that turnkey project, all in one. So Keolis bring that element about doing all the pieces together to make it quicker, 2028 being the target date.
2028, I feel like especially in MBTA time is a blink of an eye. You know, that's a very quick turnaround for a large project. What kind of barriers do you anticipate?
The barriers are as any other barriers you may have in any public transport elsewhere. So I think you have probably three elements. You need one, which we have here in Massachusetts, political will and vision, and you have it from this administration. That's great. The second one, it's the challenges are the constraints linked to the network that you operate in, because you can have old assets, old fleet. You need to replace them. There may be constraints. You cannot just put wires everywhere when you traverse 173 cities. You have rules, legislation on that. And the third one is the price and the cost. So all these three elements are the challenge, but I think we've been able to overcome that in this specific case because it's quick wins, specifically located, and in the most efficient way possible.
All right, cool. Well, I don't know if you all saw this outside, but there are some very cool vans out there, courtesy of Indigo. So, Will, I want to talk to you about the work that you're doing in this space and also how partnerships kind of factor into that.
Great. So, first of all, if you haven't seen those vehicles that are outside, I certainly encourage you guys to go see it, because those are actually the world's first robotic smart wheel powered electric vehicles, born out of MIT. And what it allows us to do is create the next generation of electric vehicles that are much lighter, yet safer and smoother, because each wheel happens to be not only providing propulsion, but active suspension to keep the vehicle stable and at the same time smooth, going over a lot of the bumps that you feel here in Massachusetts. And so what we have done for the last number of years is perfect that technology. And now we've taken that technology of smart wheels to build smart EVs with partnership with companies like Foxconn, that's going to contract manufacture out of Ohio, and a bunch of contract manufacturers in Asia that is taking this technology in our smart EV to allow for fleets to be able to buy them and implement them at 1/3 of savings in terms of weight. That means 1/3 less battery, 1/3 less cost, 1/3 faster in charging. All of these things are necessary for us to be able to serve the first market, which is the ride-hail and last-mile delivery market. And then once we have found that as we went along this partnership route, we found that there are tremendous need by companies like FedEx, like Amazon, Walmart, to deliver their packages in a more efficient way in urban areas and local communities. And we found that there's really a need for us to then partner with property owners that have charging infrastructure, that have parking infrastructure, and for us to be able to aggregate those demands from different mobility network companies. So instead of having these big, giant trucks that are coming in and out of your neighborhood, delivering some pieces here and there because they have to be there, why not aggregate that demand and be able to send smaller, lighter, cleaner vehicles rather than these gas cars that are polluting our streets? Less congestion, clean, efficient vehicles that are more cost-effective, and aggregate the demand and the drivers from the local communities so that they're trained, they know the neighborhood, and they can deliver much more efficiently. They're more friendly. They're serving their local neighborhood rather than going way out there to some other neighborhood to pick up and drop off. And oftentimes you've probably heard of some of these crime rings that are infiltrating these delivery companies, and they're dropping off the package. They take a picture, and then if it's a MacBook Pro or something, they just pick it up and it disappears. So everybody gets hurt along the way. So when we can collaborate with automakers that are building our solutions, the mobility network companies, the property managers such as BXP that we're in discussions with, and then we can create better community services. You'll see the Go Loop sign outside that says Go Loops are mobility service hubs that are clean and efficient using this new technology. And when we can place them in strategic locations that are closer to the MBTA, for example, the commuter rail, we're currently looking at Salem, we're looking at Lynn, we're looking at various neighborhoods, of course, Cambridge and Boston as well. So how do we take advantage of that last mile delivery, the last mile ride hail to make it more clean, more efficient, and more sustainable? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I find that so interesting. I remember when I was reporting on one of the many climate plans that has come out of the state, that question of emissions on that last mile delivery was a big part of it because there are so many health effects that end up in the neighborhood because of what's happening and what's coming from the vehicles there. So it's really interesting. All right, moving down the line, Brian, I want to talk about mass mobility hubs. Tell us what that is and the work that BXP is doing there.
So,
It should be on. It should be on.
is that? There's a series of coincidences that happened. One was I read this book called Knowledge Town by Dominic Endicott, and if you haven't read it, absolutely read it. He demystifies how innovation takes place in certain places like Kendall. He gives you the reality versus the myth, and he's actually doing consulting for cities up in Vermont and Burlington. And he has a strategy. So you read the book, and all these things come to light to you. And then we get introduced to Jamie Tesler at Mass Mobility Hub in the infancy of putting together the program. And I said, in the book, it says we should absolutely be teaming up with somebody like you. And then we got together and really felt like we were like-minded on the fact that we share a philosophy that we think sustainability needs at this point in the, call it evolution, and that is a little less preaching, more performance. And his premise was, I need a place where we can cluster, which is another Dominic principle that you gotta have, where you can do R&D, performance, testing, and here's the attributes we need. Well, at that point in time, we're absolutely thinking about what are we doing with our properties now that office space has been totally disrupted. And because of the disruption, and even in our best buildings, it's 23 to 25% less people coming per week, and then they're also coming at different times now, we have a ton of extra parking. So why wouldn't we work with Mass Mobility Hub and Jamie and Kate and really provide, and most times free, these places that the companies that Jamie's trying to attract to our region can do the things that they need to do, because what we found was that friction and government permitting, et cetera, landlord permitting, all that stuff, insurance gets in the way. And we think we've got a really cool way to have no friction for Jamie and Kate's clients that they're looking to bring. And then this is how we came to know Will. So the networking part is just huge. The first little summit we had with Mass Mobility Hub in Waltham, which we think is the cluster for this, we meet Will, we see this product, and we're like, well, we could use this at the Prudential Center. We've got excess parking now that we didn't have before. Why wouldn't we have their fleet in there? And we also have a lot of power, which is unusual too. So we've got the ability to scale. So the matches are coming together, and we're a little bit biased, but we really believe that the P2 corridor between the Pike on 95 and Route 2 is an incredible place for anything having to do with mobility. And that includes a big part of it in your world with battery research, battery laboratories. And one of the keys that people don't know about Kendall Square is that one of the advantages Kendall Square had, it was the first city, Cambridge, to have, call it a defined permitting for laboratories in the United States. So when we were done building the first Biogen laboratory there, which was the first life science company there, there was a, call it a prescription, a permitting process, and most cities didn't have that. So it gave companies the ability to come in and know exactly what they're going to get. And in Waltham, we have that because we've got several laboratories for batteries there already. And we have, Jamie's working with the city of Waltham to really perfect that, which would be a huge advantage for Waltham and Massachusetts. So that's a little bit about it. We're just believers in the cluster, and we're biased, but we're huge supporters of what Jamie's doing at Mass Mobility Hub. I mean, the amount of people we've met already of influence, like Will, is just off the charts that we would have never met
Oh, that's great. All right, Adam, I'm going to go to you now. Tell us a little bit about what you do at SparkCharge and how partnerships are factoring into that.
Right on. So my name's Adam Urban, CTO at SparkCharge. If you don't know SparkCharge, we are the world's largest mobile electric vehicle charging company. So we provide mobile charging solutions to fleet operators around North America. We are all over the country. We're in Canada and Mexico now as well. And we provide fleet operators that are looking to electrify their fleets with the opportunity to do that potentially before they have fixed grid infrastructure in place, or in some cases even at a lower cost than utilizing fixed infrastructure, because our model allows them not to have to put forward the capital expenditure of installing electric charging stations, upgrading transformers, installing utility wiring. We sort of offer a turnkey out-of-the-box service, can show up and charge your vehicles in as little as 2 weeks. So if you call us up, we could be on your site, a couple of weeks later, not, a couple of years later. I've heard, 60-week lead times on transformers and other things that can be really, really challenging. So we really help solve that problem. We help bring the energy from where it is to where it isn't. We also can provide clean microgrid solutions if that's something that you're interested in, if you want to get a lower cost to charge your fleets, but really doing work to enable our customers to electrify their fleets faster and at more scale.
Yeah, I mean, you're raising a really interesting point. It's something that I write about a lot, which is here in Massachusetts and beyond, there are these major backlogs when it comes to transmission, and we hear about it in the solar space. We hear about it when it comes to building more houses, powering factories, you name it. There is a huge log jam. I'm curious how transmission, which as Governor Healy acknowledged this morning is not the sexiest topic, but maybe one of the most important. How does transmission and the challenges around getting enough electricity represent a challenge for the work that you're trying to do here in the area?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of our technology is battery-based, right? So we make our own battery energy storage systems. We deploy those as part of our mobile charging solutions. And that allows us to help solve some of the challenges that we have from the grid perspective, from the transmission perspective. It allows us to help reduce peaker plants by taking energy from the grid when it's available and when it's readily available, less expensive. And in some cases, it even allows us to send energy back to the grid when peaks are there, when you need to deliver that energy. So we can sort of tailor our charging and recharging solutions to the grid's needs and allow our operators to make better use of the grid that they do have, the grid power that they have available. We can do battery buffered charging solutions, for example. So if you've got, let's say, 100 kilowatt of power that you can pull from the grid, we can allow you to pull that continuously, have a nice fixed predictable load on the grid, and then we can deploy that into our batteries and allow you to take that energy and disperse it into your vehicles much faster than that 100 kilowatt when you need to plug in, when you need to charge. So we can effectively give you a bigger grid connection than you already have by leveraging the technology that we built.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'm curious if this is posing problems for you, though.
Yeah, so for us, we took the approach of meet the grid where it is and grow with the grid. So what do I mean by that? When you look at the EV manufacturers out of Detroit and California and elsewhere, they are essentially taking the existing gas car vehicle architecture, and they made it even more heavy. And when you have a heavy vehicle, that means you need a big battery, and a big battery means that you have range anxiety. It's harder to charge. It takes fast DC to DC charging. So we took the other approach, which is we aim for light, ultra-efficient EVs with a 30 kilowatt hour battery rather than 120, 150. And when we can do that, we can use existing level 2 infrastructure. And when we can use existing level 2 infrastructure, then it makes it a lot easier for us to set up a hub at places that already have a row of level 2 chargers. And they perfectly charge overnight when parking is, not at a premium. And we make them small enough to be able to fit into the garages, into the parking spots, rather than these big, heavy trucks that you see out there on the roads. They basically require DC to DC fast charging to keep them up on the road. Otherwise, they're not doing their jobs. So by going light, going efficient, and utilizing these MIT Smart Wheel technology makes us more efficient to meet the grid where it is. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't want the grid to grow. We absolutely do. And we absolutely see room for solutions like Spark Charge to be able to speed up those charges to give you a fast drink in the middle of the day when you're running out of charge, but primarily focused on level 2 charging infrastructure to start with, and then grow from there. Meet the grid where it is.
Oh, that's really interesting. All right, so we are in a time here in Massachusetts where clean energy is really being seen as a way to build good jobs, a good workforce for people. And I'm wondering if we can talk about how clean mobility and a growing workforce kind of overlap, and what you see as being the future of a green workforce when it comes to clean mobility. Abdullah, do you want to start this?
Maybe I'll take the, do you hear me well? Sorry. So maybe I'll take the example of the BMU, the battery train program. So we will be building at some point a light maintenance facility. The technology is quite different because I look like a train nerd here because we are running diesel train, but in reality, with these battery trains, the technology is quite different. So what we will have to do is recruit more people and upskill the union people we have. So that's a different job because it's something that it's different to maintain a diesel engine than to maintain an electrical battery and all that goes with it. And it's quite modern with all the modern features you would wait from a train. So, and it's very different. And we saw that elsewhere in Europe and elsewhere in other operations where we operate battery trains or electrical trains. It's a very different. So I think it's an opportunity because it means more employment and more qualified employment too. And we will upskill also the people that are currently operating and maintaining those trains. They will have to be upskilled. So there is two opportunities there in that, just on that program.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead.
So for us, coming off the idea that Brian talked about in terms of clustering and the network effect of creating jobs, for us, certainly, the Smart Wheels technology, we're looking at bringing manufacturing and contract manufacturing partners and creating jobs there. These are the world's only Smart Wheel technology that have suspension and propulsion built in, so they're unique. And we're seeing demand from around the world, so there could be a global supply, and manufacturing could be all over the place. So there's manufacturing jobs. Then, from an EV tech standpoint, we're switching from the old technologies of gas engines and all these techs, mechanics that were trained in those jobs have to now start converting and thinking about, training many great institutions here. We can bring those young people into new tech jobs with electrification, electric vehicles. Then you're talking about huge numbers of drivers that are still needed, techs that are still needed to support this massive ride-hail delivery insurgence that's happening. Right now, we rely on millions of gig economy drivers driving their existing gas cars. That's all they can afford. And by the way, even if they can afford an EV, they don't have a place to charge it at night, right? So by providing these kind of service hubs, we will create more jobs for them to service their neighborhoods. So it's a cluster effect and a network effect that we're going to create more jobs in this new industry that's going to create better experiences and better unit economics.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about workforce?
Yeah, so for us, with jobs, I'll give you a quote from Mary Kipp is our board of director, and she is the CEO of the largest power company in Seattle. And she has said to me that the cities that have great power grids are going to have a great economy. Let's start with that. And she said, you guys are so fortunate in Massachusetts to have two really, really well-run power companies, and Eversource and National Grid. Now, again, we're a little bit biased because we work with these people a lot, but her point was, you should be rooting for these people. They're good people that are working really, really hard, but there's a lot of barriers they have that have to do with siting, community, et cetera. We're doing something pretty special in Cambridge where we knocked down one of our parking garages above ground, and now we're digging about as deep as we've ever gone, many, many floors down, and we're putting the substation there. Now, it makes sense because most of the power is used by our commercial buildings, and now we're not next to a school, which is where it was going to go, et cetera. So it was a big solution of, public, private, and then utility. So we need more of that, but I would really say, and this is not kumbaya, it's like we need to root for these people and help support them, because if we don't have a great power grid, we're not going to have an economy. That has to do with AI and everything else. But then when you come to mobility, this industry of mobility, if we don't have a good grid and we don't have, and we've got something that these companies that are about to grow can depend on, that's super, super important. And then create an environment where there's less friction for them. It's an environment that's very predictable. The job potential is incredible, let alone the innovation that can take place if we can get the cluster here in Boston. And for a community that's really dedicated to sustainability, probably one of the best things we could do for our state in America is make this the mass mobility hub for the U.S.
Well, we're coming up on a moment where we're going to need to move a lot of people around, which is we're just a few years away from Boston being one of the host cities for the World Cup. We've got, I think, 7 games that we'll have here in Boston. Some 450,000 people are expected to attend those games, and the planning committee behind the World Cup in Boston is hoping that this will be a hub that people will stay in while they're also attending matches in New York and Philadelphia. So lots of bodies that need to get moved around. From where you sit, what needs to happen in order for Boston to be ready to move these people around in an efficient, sustainable way? Abdullah, would you like to start off?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the EV and personal cars, but I think what we should do is have as much public transportation as we can. I'm sorry to say that, but we have to. And for that, I think we have plans, and we're working with the MBTA. And I think for those kind of events, we need as much public transport to bring them to the event, bring them to the matches, bring them back. And to do so, and then there is a specificity with the World Cup, which is there will be international people coming in, and they are used to, and they're expecting public transport, because it's different. Where probably in the US, when you have such a large event, local large event, you probably rely more on the car. So that expectation is there. So we have just to meet the demand where it is, and we have to have plans to get them as much service as we can, which we are working on. I'm sorry for that.
We're used to the great American pastime of leaving an event and then sitting in the parking lot for 3 hours trying to leave. Yeah. I'm going to skip you for 1 second, Will, because Adam, I haven't called on you for a while. I'm wondering if I can tap you in for this one. What has to happen to get Boston ready for the World Cup?
It's a great question. I mean, obviously, from the Spark Charge perspective, I think adding and supplanting our existing EV charging infrastructure is a big help. We've seen for events, for large events, where you get a lot of people on the road at a time, you get long lines at charging stations, people sitting, waiting to recharge, they get stuck somewhere. So building out sort of temporary infrastructure during the events to make sure that we have enough of that recharging in place to allow people to get where they need to go, very important. I totally agree, though. I think we definitely need to grow public transit, have more buses, more trains, more routes moving, and certainly, electrifying as much of that as possible to help reduce our emissions and keep everything clean is always a win.
Brian?
I'm really encouraged about analytics right now, and how we move throughout the city and the region daily is totally different than it was pre-COVID, because we're totally untethered now from the desk, et cetera. So everybody will always say that this is a discussion we have as a family. Why is there always traffic versus it used to be at peak times? And when I look out the Prue, you go, that used to be going that way, right? Instead of this way. Well, it's totally different. And we've got to get some strong analytics around it. And I think the existing technology that's there, let's say a product like Will has, if you put some analytics to it and understand how people are moving, you could use their product to do it better and quicker. So here's one example. In Dallas, Texas, they got this bullet train that goes from downtown way out to the suburbs. So let's say it goes out to Plano. Well, the way that probably most people would do it is at the end of that, there'd be a shuttle bus that takes them to the cluster, let's say, or to the office buildings. Well, the way they're doing it is they're doing it with vouchers for Uber. And instead of having a set time for that shuttle bus that is prohibitive, and human beings love convenience, you can have vouchers, and it isn't, oh, now you're going to have 100 single Ubers. No. The smart people get a minivan, and now you could have a van from you, well, that's electric. You're only going 2 miles, 3 miles, and you can have it there scheduled, and then you join a group and get in and go. That's the kind of efficiency that I think you really need for an event that we're talking about. The product is there. We need to link it with how movement is taking place. We've just hired a young man from coming out of Tufts in their IT degree department, and he's going to work strictly on analytics for us for sustainability as the primary sector, and then secondary will be how people work, which really ties to the first.
Yeah, I mean, I think culture and American culture and expectations is sort of underpinning all of this, because part of the shift has to do with changing the way that we think about convenience and about how we want to move around.
Yeah, there were some tactics that were good 10 years ago. Maybe a shuttle bus was a good tactic 10 years ago, but I'm sure all of us have seen the shuttle buses go by with no human beings in it. Well, that's not good either, right? And they're all gas shuttle buses from the past. So, okay, what was good before isn't as good now, and it may make people feel good, but it's not getting us to our goal.
Yeah, I think Brian is spot on. And leveraging technology, leveraging AI, machine learning, and pattern recognition with our data, because every one of these smart EVs that are coming out of the smart mobility hubs, called loops, are going to be 100% wired. We know exactly where they are. We know their patterns. We know where they should go. If there's a Celtics game at TD Garden, like tonight, you're gonna have to send vehicles out there to facilitate and send them where they're needed. We're even working with Rich Davies over at Massport over there, exploring how to create a loop from Woburn directly to the airport. We're looking at talking to Salem and Lynn and areas like that that may need mobility loops like ours, and just set up as many loops that overlap as possible.
Yeah, maybe we come up with a neat word for us. Is it digital green digital, or is this sustainalytics? I don't know. But there's a zone
that
there.
has a ring.
There's a zone there that could be incredibly productive and very fast acting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
May I add something? Once I strongly believe that technology is part of the solution. There are things we can do that are not necessarily being technology. I'll be the bad guy here, so talking about that. But given the example that we have just, with the MBTA, we just announced that we have moved some of the trains from diesel to biofuel, which is a different technology. It's not really technology, I call it low tech, but it's a way of decarbonizing immediately today without changing anything other than the fuel. And because we have the political will here, we've been able to do that. So we started the trial like a couple of weeks ago. That, just to give an example, replacing diesel by biofuel reduced the CO2 emission by 70% already. Yes, the long-term path is electrification, and we're talking a lot about batteries, electric, and I agree with that. But sometimes the climate change fight is now. So if we can do that now, we can do it. And there is, again, the political will here. There is that vision, and we do it. And that trial started a couple of weeks, and we expect to do it. And then we can reduce it by 70% of CO2 emission. It's massive.
Yeah, it's vegetable oil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabrina, I would like to add, Keolis is a group that we should be rooting for as well, along with the power companies, because let's face it, your undertaking and what you guys were given as a challenge was just huge, and I think the community needs to get behind you guys more.
Well, it does
Thanks
seem
for your
like
leadership.
there's been a turning of the tide recently. We at the Globe had a story recently about how the head of the MBTA has become a sort of a cult hero among people who are beginning to root for the T, which is a big change. We have just about 2 minutes left, and I'm curious, before I let you go, if you could snap your fingers and make one thing easier, what would that thing be when it comes to mass mobility and electrification? Adam, let's start with you.
I think this is touching on something that we heard from Governor Healy earlier, that permitting really is one of the big roadblocks, right, to getting things done quickly, and just removing that red tape and allowing new technologies that maybe we don't understand as well to be deployed faster would be great.
All right, rapid fire, over to you, Brian.
I'm the same. It's permitting, and maybe make it friction, so it's all the things that create friction for these great companies to do what they need to do here.
Will?
For us, is about focusing capital. So capital is spread out all over the place. When we see that there is a catalyst and a cluster that can make a big impact, having that capital focus in on making sure that cluster grows and technology can be implemented and developed and deployed as soon as possible using that capital. So capital is a limiting factor right now.
Abdullah, last word to you.
Thank you. 20 seconds. I'm great with that. No, I think for us as a public transportation, I think for us, going back to the community, I think where we see education and awareness about climate change, you can see support and you can see changes happening like for Fairmont. So I would advocate Click. It's like everybody understand the dynamics and the risks with climate change, which is not a common, and I think I'm talking about people that understand what I'm talking about, but it's out of this room, it's maybe different. So Click, like everybody understand the challenges and the constraints, because then you can get more people into it, you can have more companies, you have more technology, you can have more support from communities. And I think that's the key thing, it's to embark everybody and all communities, all citizens.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to tell the story. We're working on it. All right. Well, thank you all of you for being here today. Thanks to Climate Tech for having us, and thanks to all of you for tuning in and listening.